Yes, there. Okay. So this is the webinar Confidence with Color and Composition. And I think that that's a really critical topic for just about any artist, really, any artist in any media. But I think that it's sort of a missing piece with some quilters' background. They don't always have that piece. And so then they find that they want to branch out and find their own thing, and they just can't seem to make it work. I don't know how else to describe it. You know, they just can't seem to put it all together. And there's a reason for that. There's some missing pieces. Hi, Christy. Some missing pieces in the you're in your, I don't know, education or your toolbox. And so I'm hoping to kind of shine a little bit of light on that today and see if I can help you with that. And then also I'm going to be offering you a course where we go more in depth with it and you actually get to practice working these steps. Okay. All right. So who else? Oh, good. Ariel's here from Spain. Yay. Must be late at night for her. Ariel, I'm so glad you're here. Yes. Hi, sweetheart.
I almost forgot.
Oh.
Oh, I have a meeting. I have to go.
So this is Ariel. She was one of my first international students during COVID. And she just took off like a bat out of hell with, you know, doing really well, really fast. So guess what? We have someone from South Africa here today and someone from Qatar.
Hi, Christy.
Hi, Ariel. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, and from all different parts of the country. So, sorry?
No, I was sorry.
Okay, that's okay. So
I was on mute.
Yeah, if you want to mute yourself, if you're not speaking, that would be helpful. So we were just talking about where you're from and what got you curious about coming today and what you're hoping to learn and where you're stuck in your own artistic journey. So who wants to go next?
I will.
Go ahead, Donna.
Yes, I saw your posting on Facebook and I liked the quilt that you had made, and it's got a lot of curvy lines in it. And like Bonnie, I'm finding myself a bit still. I am an art quilter. I do a lot of raw edge photo to quilt, and I love that work, but I have designed a pattern for an op art quilt. And with each quilt I make, I try to learn a new technique, a new something within that quilt. And so this one has an awful lot of little curves and piecing to it. And it's going to be a challenge in that it's only a 3-color quilt, red, white, and blue. But I can use variances of one of the colors. So the red and white will be consistent, but the blue will have variance.
Okay.
And I was interested in the color. I've done some color training before with color wheel and that sort of thing, but there's always more to learn. And I also just wanted to get to know who you are, Roxanne, and what's going on in all of this. And I'm always interested in learning. And in Bonnie's journey, for part of that, I started doing what's called a journal quilt. Each square is an odd shape, so it's a rectangle 8.5 by 11, and each one has a different technique. And I have no time limit when to finish it. So as I learn a new technique, I make an 8.5 by 11 something to go into that journal quilt.
What a great idea.
Thank you. That's a great idea. I might try that.
Well, I'm having fun with it. I've done a lot of different things, like even using Tyvek.
Yes.
You know, the stuff they use for insulation in a building.
Yes.
The plastic stuff. I've used some of that to create a moon and then a moonscape in front of it. So it's been a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I'm done.
Wonderful. All right. Shirley, do you want to go next?
Gosh, I've been quilting for a long time. I mean, I'm turned 78 recently. I learned partially some hand quilting techniques and stuff when I was about 11 or 12. So, but then I didn't really do quilting for a long time. When I moved to the Raleigh area to Cary, a friend of mine that I met there says, "Oh, I bet you'd be interested in this." And she took me to the Quilt Guild meeting there. And I've been doing lots of different stuff, but I get these ideas and I get see this project and I collect all of the stuff. I have so many projects like that. A lot I've given away even. And I'm sort of going through declutter now. Oh, and I'm big on collecting tools. I would buy a tool whether I thought I'd ever use it or not. And what's the funniest thing, the ones that I thought, oh, well, this is just another for the collection, I would end up using it more, like that little piece of wood with a piece sticking out to fasten the safety pin with.
Yes.
That is an amazing tool. And I just thought it was going to be one of the add-tos, as well as the one that does the 1/4 inch when you put it across a square and you mark your 1/4 inch and then cut it so you have the half square or whatever.
So tell us what got you curious about coming today.
Well, I didn't know anything about it. They just said you were going to be on here, and it might be some people are interested in, but I don't see anybody from our guild. So I thought I'd missed it, and then I realized I hadn't. So
okay,
I was happy to come just to be around quilters face to face.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about them having Zoom groups.
Having what now?
Zoom.
Oh, Zoom groups.
Groups on Zoom.
Yeah.
Like this.
Yeah.
Except, well, the guild during the pandemic would have meetings.
Yes.
Via Zoom.
Yeah, that's the only way we could do it back then. Okay, great. So anything else you want to share with us about what you would like to be able to make?
I don't have any particular project in mind. I just said I got to work. I don't have to,
okay,
but I want to.
Okay.
1, get rid of a lot of stuff. 2, take the stuff I really am interested in doing.
Okay.
And
yeah, prioritizing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I've got to declutter before I can get to it, though.
Okay. Okay. Who else wants to jump in? Zohar, where are you from? She can hear me. Okay. Christy, do you want to go?
Sure. I am a large-scale raw edge collage representational art quilter. My favorite size range is about 5 by 7 feet. I have worked larger. I can't afford to work at that scale with my domestic sewing machine because I always have to pay a long armor to do the custom quilting for it. So I'm trying to work smaller. It's a struggle, but it's necessary. So I don't generally have problems with picking colors, but because I live in a country where there's not a single quilt shop, I am limited to the stash I have, and it's not a small stash, but even in my latest piece, I don't have a lot of the darks. I don't have a lot of range in the darks.
Mm,
And so I'm having to make substitutions, which
Mhm.
so far in all of my experience have been very lucky and been part of my favorite part of what I did, by veering off my intended path. But there may come a time when that doesn't work out, and I'm really stumped for a choice. So I obviously don't have opportunities to attend in-person workshops or quilt shows or anything like that. So my only access to the wider quilting world is through Zoom. And so whenever an opportunity comes up that's in a time when I'm awake, I grab it and I take it. And I've never attended anything and not learned something, even if sometimes I'll see a pattern online and be like, oh, I know how to make that. I don't need to buy the pattern. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to buy the pattern anyway, because the idea came from that designer.
Yeah.
And I've never not learned something that I wasn't expecting to learn, even if I did know how to do it without doing it their way. Like the reason why they did a certain thing or
Mhm.
quilted it in a certain way has been educational to me. And so I'm like thirsty for any opportunity to learn and just be with other quilters.
Great. Thank you. I'm just jotting down some notes so I don't forget you. All right, anybody
No
else want to chime in before we dive in? You don't have to. It's up to you if you want to. Okay. All right, and feel free to raise your hand during the meeting and ask questions. So I have a little slideshow I want to start with. So I'm going to go ahead and share the screen. I can still see some of you. Let me go. Is that large enough for you to read? Yeah, no? Okay, let me see if I can go full screen. I think if I just hit play, it will start. There we go. That's better, right? Okay. So I named this confident color and composition because I think that's the two areas where most artists and quilters struggle the most, and they feel uncomfortable with it the most, and they all they want confidence. So that's where I'm hoping to. And a lot of people in that little poll that I gave on the Facebook group said that they really wanted some help working with abstract art quilts. Although anything I share today is going to be applicable to just about any quilt you want to make. Okay. So I know how it is when you're staring at a blank canvas, and when you have all the possibilities, it's like, you freeze, right? You have too many possibilities. And so I find it's really helpful to set yourself some parameters. And the first parameter I like to think about is a theme or an idea. And so that can be abstract, it can be realistic, it can be whatever you want. It could be relating to any kind of a subject, like a place that you've been to, or people, or animals, or a certain climate, or weather, or seasons. Could be buildings, it could be landscapes, it could be rocks or mountains, could be outer space, could be ocean, water, streams, plants, flowers, leaves, roads, maps, or just plain old abstract shapes, geometric shapes. So there's a lot of subject matter out there that you can choose from. And I think you just kind of have to go with your heart. The piece that I'm working on right now was loosely inspired by shells. I have this big coffee table book and it's all about shells. And so I picked my colors and I decided, well, this really reminds me of shells. So I went with that idea. The next thing that I think is really helpful to do is to choose some kind of a structure or a layout or some kind of a skeleton to work within. And that can be, I'm going to go into what some of those structures are in a minute. But another thing that is also helpful is to pick an adjective to describe your elements. So maybe you want to explore the use of line in your piece, and you want to use, different kinds of line in your piece. And that could be one thing that you could do. And you definitely want to pick a color and value scheme, because when you have all the colors, it's just, overwhelming again. And the other thing I think is very helpful is to not really pick a principle, but really work with the design principles and composition principles. And we're going to go over that some more too. Okay. So any questions about this slide, or should I just keep going? Just chime in. Yes, Donna. Just unmute yourself, sweetheart.
I was trying. I couldn't find my unmute button, so I was just going to say, no, just go on.
Oh, okay. All right, then I will go on. Okay. All right, so we're going to play a little game I'm calling Design Roulette. Okay. And so we went over some of the subject ideas already. So what we're going to do, and I've created some cards ahead of time, and we're going to shuffle some ideas, and I'm going to let you guys choose. And then I'm going to switch over to my overhead camera, and I'm going to play around with some shapes, and you can help me and watch me as I work. So we'll do it together. Okay. And hopefully we'll all learn something in the process. Okay. So before we do that, let's pick a subject. So did any of the subject ideas that I rattled on before about kind of spark something for you? I'll go over them again, like a place, animals. I'm going to kind of have it veer more towards the abstract side, because I'm just working with scraps of fabric right now. I'm not actually going to make somebody's face today, but could be build.
Can I suggest wind?
Wind. I love that. Okay. Wind. Very nice. Okay. So we're going to do wind. Anyone else is everyone cool with that idea? All right. Okay, good. All right. So then the next thing I want to go over with you is the structures. Hold on. Let me just see if I want to. No, I want to stick with this slide. So I had these cards that I made up, and these are the different structures that I mentioned. So in design, we always want to have some kind of underlying skeleton that makes sense of what we're doing, so that we're not just looking at complete chaos, right? So one of the design structures that's very common is asymmetrical design, okay? And that is where we have differing elements on both sides of the composition, but they're not the same. Whereas with symmetrical, they are the same on both sides. Make sense so far? Okay. I'm going to see if I can. Okay. All right, here's another structure that we are all familiar with, circular. So anything going around in a circle, and that might be useful for our wind assignment. We'll see. And then a grid structure is very common. We all know that from traditional quilting. It can be blocks, it can be rectangles, but it's basically rectangles and squares arranged in a grid. You can have a framed composition, something that's got a definite frame around it. I'm going over these quickly. You don't have to memorize them or anything. It's just so you can kind of get an idea what I'm talking about. Here's another one, radial. Radial is different from circular because radial is like the spokes of a wheel, or like a flower that bursts out, a sunburst kind of pattern. Whereas circular kind of goes around. And then we have diagonal, anything that uses diagonal, which is also useful to create the illusion of movement. And then vertical, where most of the elements are going up and down. and horizontal, where most of the elements are going across. Excuse me a second. Another one is triangular, which I don't use that often. So it's kind of like more of an obscure one, but it's kind of like where the things are in the piece are kind of in a triangle. Okay, and then there's one that's sort of like overall, where everything is sort of scattered evenly throughout the piece. It's sort of a lack of structure, really, but it still, works as a quote unquote structure. So I'm going to shuffle these up and we're going to play design roulette. I have no idea which, I've got them face down. I don't know which one I'm going to pick. I'm hoping it's one that will make sense with our wind idea. Okay, so this is a game you can play at home too. Overall, I picked overall. Okay. All right. I'm not crazy about that one, so I'm going to pick again. You can cheat. It's all right. It's our game, right? There's no rules. I could do overall, but I think it's going to be a little bit harder to demonstrate what I want to do. All right, let's pick this one. Horizontal. Okay, that's an easy one. So we'll do that one. All right, we got our structure, horizontal. So we can put those cards away. All right, then I want to go over the elements of design. Is everybody more or less familiar with the elements of design? You know what I'm talking about?
Are those the same as in photography?
Probably. So I'll go over them again. So the first one you would want to be aware of is line. Okay, the use of line. The use of shape. And this is true of any media, any art form. So yes, also in photography. Color, yay, we love color. Value. Value is the relative lightness or darkness of a color. It's a very important design element. And then I also like to say pattern is a design element, use of pattern. And then the last one would be texture, which is very important in fiber arts because we have that advantage over other artists. We can really use texture a lot with our work. So now we're going to play, I've got 3 of each, so I'm going to grab one of these 3, blindly shuffling here. Don't know what I'm going to pick. Curved line. So I'm going to use curved lines primarily in my piece. And the next one is shape. So let's shuffle the shape. Angular. That's going to be interesting. Angular shapes in a curved pattern somehow. Okay. It's going to be challenging now. Okay. We did that one. Now let's pick color. And I've only got 3 variables here, but you can pick as many as you want to choose from. I'm going to choose muted colors, primarily muted colors. Let's do value now. Value is going to be light value colors, muted. Okay. And pattern will be alternating. So we have an alternating pattern here. And texture is going to be rough. Got a rough texture. Okay, this is our assignment. All right, we've got a horizontal structure, which is fairly easy. We're going to use a curved lines. Curved lines. We've got angular shapes. We've got muted colors, light values, alternating patterns, and rough texture. Oh boy. Okay, so let me stop the share for a second. Escape. There we go. Okay, have I lost anybody yet? You still all with me? Yeah? Okay, good. All right, so now I'm going to switch over to my camera phone, and what I have done is ahead of time, I picked out a cool background color and a warm background color because I didn't know what we were going to pick. And I just cut out squares that are like 8 by 10. Somebody has a question. Let's see. Let's see what they have to say. Could you give us the name? Could you give us 3 of the each of the elements to choose from when we do our own roulette, please? Oh yeah, absolutely. Actually, yes. In fact, there are many. So let's just play around with that idea. So let me go back to my cards. There are more than 3. So here's some examples of texture: smooth and fluffy. But you can probably think of more. Can anyone think of another texture idea?
Scaly.
Scaly. Cool. You can make your own list, okay? For pattern, I had busy, simple, and alternating. Who's got another idea for pattern? That's a little trickier. If you can't think of one, that's fine.
Optical illusion.
Oh, yeah, okay. Okay. And then for value, I had high contrast value, and dark and light. But there's a lot of different possibilities for value as well. And for color, I had bright, cool, and muted. But it could also be complementary or analogous or anything you want. Okay, for shape, I had square, I had hollow, I had angular, right? But it could be rectangular, triangular, or you could be even more specific than I was. And for line, I had jagged and wiggly, and you can also do interrupted or curvy, or any of those adjectives would work. Okay. Is that helpful?
Yes.
Okay, good. Perfect. Okay. All right, so working with our, let's see, we've got mute. I think I'm going to choose this background because it fits our adjectives a little bit better. So I'm going to plop that over there. Okay, and then I'm going to switch our camera. And I'm going to share the screen. Hold on a second. Stop the share for a minute. Bear with me a minute while I get this figured out. No matter how many times I do this, it's always like doesn't work when I want it to. Second here.
And we're just watching now, right? We're not supposed to be following along and like making something ourselves?
No, you don't, I mean, you can if you want to, but I wanted you to watch me first and then see what we come up with. All right, I'm still struggling with this stupid thing.
And for anyone who doesn't know,
There
if
we
you want to
go.
quick unmute yourself, if you want to quick unmute yourself, you can just hold down the space bar for as long as you need to say something and then let go and it will remute you automatically.
Okay, great. All right, now you can see my desk, right? And my feet.
No, the feet too. Yeah. Okay.
A little bit.
Thanks for the trick, Christy. That's quite easy to use.
Yeah. I know it's still a little crooked there. Is that better?
Yes.
Now, let me get this over this way. This is always the tricky part. Getting it just right. I'm gonna move my chair over. Okay. All right, so I separated some piles of scraps ahead of time. So I have this whole batch of like cool colors and warm colors and then dark value colors here. And then I also have another batch that's more patterned. Okay, I'm still not happy with the way this looks. That's better, right? Yeah, okay. So let me get my adjectives again. So I'm going to be going horizontally because that's the structure that I picked. So I'm going to go this way with my, rather than I'm going to go the long way this way. I got my little rotary cutter here. And, alternating, light, muted, angular, and curved. Okay, so for my lines, I'm thinking, I said curved lines, but I've got angular shapes. So I'm going to have to cut some angular shapes and I'm going to have to choose more slightly muted colors. So this is a more muted color, I would say. And this is a more muted color. They're a little bit grayed down. Can you see that? They're not real bright. Like this red is real bright. And then this one is a little more muted. Looks like I'm doing sort of a complementary color scheme here without even meaning to, but that's okay. So the blues and the oranges, that works for me. And maybe I want to pick one color, this blue here, that's a little bit brighter just for a bit of contrast. Because you always want to have a bit of contrast somewhere, otherwise it gets a little boring. And then we also have this rough texture that we're working with, and I don't have any textured fabrics, but I'm going to do a pattern fabric that has a bit of a rough appearance to it. Let's see if I can find it in my pile over here. Does that look sort of rough to you? Yes, no?
Yeah, kind of like watery rust.
Okay. Let me see if I can find something else that looks a little rougher. I mean, this is probably not going to make a fabulous piece of art, but it does stretch you. It exercises and gets you thinking about these different attributes of the elements of design. Okay, so I'm going to use those for now. Whoops.
Those.
And you notice that I also picked mostly lighter values. This is dark and this is dark, but you've got to have some contrast again. You can't just make it all one thing. So I have some muted, some lighter values. I might need another light value. Let me grab another one.
Even in their darkness, they're a muted color because they have the black background instead of a white.
Yes.
The tint is dark instead of light. Yeah.
Yes. I don't like that pink, so I'm not going to put that in. Sometimes it's just playing around till you find the right thing. This has a bit of a rougher texture to it too, so maybe I'll throw that in there too. Anyway, you get the idea, right? Okay, now my shapes have got to be angular. And I've got to put some alternating pattern in there. So what kind of shapes should I cut? Triangles?
You
Yes.
know, I keep seeing in my mind with the hurricane we just had come through. I
Yeah.
keep seeing the triangular leaves of my palm tree blowing in the wind.
Oh, yes. So there's long, skinny triangles.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that idea. That's fabulous. Okay. So let me move this over a little bit. So let's cut some of those shapes. Now, if I were going to do this for real, I would make sure I used fabric that had fusible on the back of it already, so that I could just iron it all down. But today I'm just messing around. Make them different. Okay. So what I'm doing is I'm sort of building a little pile of shapes here. Let's do a secondary shape. What other shape should I use that's an angular shape? Maybe a fatter triangle? Oops, somebody wants to come in. Let me admit them in. Okay. Maybe a fatter triangle. Let's see what that looks like. Those. And maybe some longer rectangles. Or weird shapes. Okay. And we're gonna do, okay, so this, again, this is mostly horizontal, right? So I'm gonna cut some long skinny strips of this one. Varying widths. Oh man, this arm is sore. I had 2 shots in this arm yesterday and it's still sore. All right, let's do that. And then we got to do a rough texture, but I think I'm going to add that afterwards. So then I would just start composing. I know my structure is going to be mostly horizontal. I'm going to put the darker pieces closer to the bottom. but also have some curved lines. So this is a bit of a challenge. So maybe I'm gonna do something like that. And maybe I don't want to put it smack dab in the middle because then it becomes a bullseye. So I'm going to move it over a little bit. Let's see, how did I have that? That. And that. I'm going to throw in one of these too. Oh, maybe not. I like this better. I forgot how I did it. Was it like that? Something like that. So that kind of gives you the idea of there's something flying through the air here. And I want to give this a horizontal feeling as well. It's nice also to underlap and overlap shapes. I'm going to do something like that. There's my curved. You see how that makes a rhythm or a pattern? That's an alternating pattern. Anybody have some suggestions? Just unmute yourself and help me design this.
If you also made long skinny triangles like you did with the kind of acid green out of that textured light one that's like the blue and the white,
This one?
and kind of slip that in the background,
Okay.
especially because there's like an ombre aspect to that. It would look like wind, and it has the having grown up in Miami, that bright sky right next to like very dark, well, not
Yeah.
very, but comparatively dark clouds, has that threatening look of the bands of a hurricane when they first start coming in before you really get hit with it.
Right. I know what you speak. We have hurricanes in North Carolina too. So the lines, unfortunately, the shapes are angular, which makes it a little more tricky. And I notice I'm upside down, so I don't know if I can flip this. There. That's how I want it to, with the heavier values at the bottom.
With your piece that you've got your fingers on right now,
This one?
that curved line that's at the top, mimic it.
Yes.
And cut a strip and use that horizontally across your piece.
I agree. Maybe I get rid of that.
And even put it under some of those yellows.
Yep.
Bring them up on top.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the idea.
This one will not lay flat, unfortunately. You can get ironed enough. Let me get this. Yeah. I'm not crazy about this piece right here. I like the contrast, but I think it's too big. So when you're working with shapes, size and the scale of the shapes is important too, because this is such a strong contrast there that it almost is like my eye just goes there and then it stops. So I really want to keep moving the eye around the
So,
piece.
so, instead of taking it out, put it back, put a little piece that joins, that goes between it and your circle up there. Something thin and small.
Same fabric?
Yeah, same fabric. Something that'll attach it to the curved line to head direct your eye. There you go.
Yep. Okay,
And if you still don't like it, take it out.
yeah, I still want to add this piece. Because I think the
Mm-hmm.
color needs it. But I'm not sure if I want to, where I want to put it.
That's good. From here on video, that's good.
Okay,
That's good too. It needs a balancing piece across the quilt though.
across which way?
Like use that other little piece of purple that's by the hot pink
Yep,
and bring that down someplace in the lower corner. There you go.
yep. So what you're doing right now is you're using the principle of repetition.
And symmetry to
And
some degree.
Yeah, right. Balance is another principle that we're going to talk about, and there's a lot.
Yeah, balance.
Yeah, that's.
I'll remute.
Now, is this a great masterpiece? No, but it gets you thinking about how, what a lot of times we're making something and we can't figure out what the heck is wrong with it, but we know there's something off. We just can't figure out what it is. So that's where going back to the principles and elements of design is very useful. Okay. Anyone want to change this design or add anything to it or take anything away?
What if you took the lower purple triangle and flipped it upside down? So it's more reflecting the shape rather than, because that's what I see first if they're going the same way.
Yep. I like that better. Also, what I would do is maybe move this over a little bit.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
No?
No,
No, that didn't work. Okay.
not that far. The upper maroon line, can we slant that just slightly?
This
No,
one?
the lower to you. That one. Slope it just slightly. Your left hand down. Yeah.
That way?
No, no, I was thinking of the whole line. So it takes your eye more diagonal than directly horizontal, and just slightly. The other half of the line too. That one. Yeah, give it some.
A little more.
That's not exactly what I had in mind, but that works.
Okay. It's hard for me to translate.
I
what
was
you're saying.
thinking of it going diagonally across at about 10 degrees.
Okay. So
A
like
10-degree diagonal line, a very slight diagonal line. Yes, like that.
yeah,
Yes.
that is more interesting. Right.
It's more interesting, and because wind moves things
Yes.
and it creates more movement.
Right. Exactly. Diagonal line is always going to give the illusion of more movement.
And it still goes across to carry our horizontal theme.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. So, yeah, so just, like staying true to the basic underlying structure gives us a way to organize the elements. And that's what I'm trying to get across here more than anything else. Like I said, it's not a great masterpiece. It's just like fooling around with elements.
That first piece that you were going to remove and we decided to leave it on by adding another peachy color, Can you tip that just slightly opposite the upper angle?
This way?
That way, just slightly. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
I like that a lot better.
More movement again, doesn't it? It's like
Uh-huh.
the wind is like tossing all these things around. Yeah. Now, obviously, if you had a bigger canvas, you could do a little bit more with this, but it's useful just to do it with a small piece of fabric like this. And I've even.
I actually like your composition.
What's that?
I like the composition.
Yes. Now, here's another idea for you guys. This is something I did a long time ago. Here's a little piece that I did, and I made it into a little note card, and I add a little stitching to it. So this is a great stash buster. You can just cut up these shapes and fool around with them. So this would be a good example of a grid, kind of an irregular grid. And this one kind of, you know, the stitching really makes it horizontal, I think. I don't know if you can see that. You can turn it up the other way. And this one is in a little frame. You can turn it around. There we go. So you can play around with all these different things and then add a little bit of stitching to them. And I just put something like cardboard or something underneath it. And they make great gifts. Okay, before I switch my phone back to you, does anyone else have any other thoughts with this exercise? Okay, so we're going to switch that back to me. Good. And I'm going to unspotlight myself. There we go. So what do you guys think of that?
It was fun.
I enjoyed.
Just gives
Go
you
ahead.
good ideas, good place to start
Yes,
when you're stuck.
right. It's a good place to start, period, because, you know, a lot of times we just don't know where to start. And that's the thing that stops us in our tracks is it's just, where do I begin? I want to make abstract work, but I don't know how to do it. I don't even know where to begin. So I think it's a useful exercise for that. And I'm not the first one to have thought of this. A lot of people have written books about it. You know, teachers have taught it. It's not a new concept, but I kind of like the idea of just making these little note cards and shuffling them around and then challenging yourself to do it that way. All right, so let me go back to my little show, my little slide presentation. Where are you? There you are. And let me share the screen with y'all.
Would it be fair to say that if you, at least when you're starting, you only picked 3 of the parameters to focus on rather than all of them? Would
I don't
the design be as effective?
I don't think it really matters. I mean, I think as long as you have some choices, you know, it just gives you some alternatives, you know, when you're stuck. Like I think the one about line is especially easy to make up adjectives for. There's interrupted, there's smooth, there's diagonal, there's jagged, there's, you know, a million different examples of that. You can even Google it, you know.
Mhm.
Or go
You
on.
could just go in and say, I want to do everything in circular shapes, and that's it. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. However, when you're designing and everything has a circular shape, you might run into the problem of not enough variety. So I want to go into that in a minute here. So another question people wanted some answers to was, why do my quilts lack sparkle? And I contend that once you know the rules of design, it's easy to figure out why. So one of the main bugaboos, one of the main problems is with that is you don't have enough value contrast. which is why even though I picked the muted value card or the light value card, I made sure there was 1 or 2 darks in there too. Because if I had all the same, it would be totally boring. Does that make sense? So I like to follow like a 70-30 rule or an 80-20 rule. Like I'm going to pick 80% of my shapes are going to be this, or 80% of my colors are going to be muted, but I'm still going to have a couple like that clear or brighter blue in comparison. It was still muted, but it looked brighter compared to the other colors. I need a little bit of variety in that way. Okay. You've got to have variety of shape, of line, of color, of value, of size. You've got to have some kind of variety in your piece. Not everything can be all circles. I think it's more interesting when everything is completely the same. Although if you do decide to limit that to all circles, make some hollow, make some small, make some big, make some with curvy lines around them, you know, make variety in some way so that you're not just stuck with, oh, I've got all these circles and they're all the same. Yay. Right? Okay. You've got to have some kind of a focal point. I think that, or you have to intentionally make sure that you're moving the eye around the piece without one. A good example of that would be like an overall design where everything is placed equally around the piece. Another problem with lacking sparkle is all your colors are subdued, and we just talked about that. That's an example of that. Like if all your colors are muted, well, it's kind of look a little ho-hum, you know? Or if all of your colors are screaming in your face, then there's no contrast there either. So that's not a great idea. Or your piece lacks movement, it's too static. So everything is kind of plopped down, equidistant to each other, and there's no like diagonal movement, or there's no any kind of movement. It's just there. That's gonna dull down your piece. Another thing is, you know, maybe your main idea is confused. It's not clear, it's not harmonious, or you don't have, you know, if your piece is going to be about oceans, well, you're going to have things related to oceans in there. You're not going to have, you might have a lighthouse, you might have a sailboat, but you're definitely not going to have a container truck or something in there, right? Usually.
Or a cactus.
Or a cactus, right? Yeah. Yeah. Because you don't want people confused. You want them intrigued, but not confused when they're looking at your piece. Any thoughts about that?
One other thing that makes me feel a quilt has a lack of sparkle is that there's no place for the eye to rest.
Yes. And that goes back to the focal point idea.
I've seen that in beautiful cave quilts that are all made of cave facet fabrics.
Yes.
And there's so much cacophony in it. I have to walk away.
Yep. I know exactly what you're talking about. That's where it's important to have some kind of a focal point or some kind of value difference, something that does give your eye a place to rest. He's completely correct in that. Okay, here's another question. How do I know when my quilt is done? How many of you struggle with that? Yeah, everybody's nodding and smiling. Yeah, me too. Okay. So here's a really quick self-critique that you can borrow, okay? You have a clear underlying structure. We talked about the structures, right? You have some kind of thing underlying the elements that you're placing around your piece. And you have clear pathways that lead the eye around the piece. So you don't have one bullseye where your eye stops and that's it. And these are questions you can ask yourself. Do I have a pathway? Do I have a bullseye? Do I have a clear structure? Do I have a clear focal area? Sometimes you have a main focal area and 2 subordinate focal areas. That will also move your eye around the piece. I personally like to do that a lot. You have a clear color scheme. Sometimes with the color, it's more important about not so much about what colors you've picked than the values that you've picked. That's becomes like really important. You have a good sense of depth or an intentional lack of depth. So you want to be intentional. A great way to do that is to overlap pieces. To give a little bit, we did that with our piece. We put some over and under. And sometimes your piece is a pictorial piece, so you have a clear subject in the foreground and a clear background in the background. Or things are bigger in the front and smaller in the back. So you want that to be clear. We talked about variety already. And you have a naturally pleasing sense of balance and visual weight in your piece from side to side and top to bottom. Sometimes with beginners, I'll find they'll put a really heavy piece of something or really dark that reads heavy at the top of the piece. And it just, for our sensibilities in the West, it just feels like, no, it's heavier. It should be at the bottom. So that's an easy hack. You know, put the heavier, darker pieces at the bottom. Any thoughts about that? Questions? Okay. So here comes the part where I get to offer you something. So this was helpful, but I still get overwhelmed. So that's where I come in. There's nothing wrong with you. You just need to practice like we did earlier. Okay. And I have this course. It has 6 live Zoom sessions. And if you're interested in it, these are the dates. There's 8 hours total of live instruction time, all of which will be recorded if you can't make one. It's going to be on Saturdays like today from 12 to 2 Eastern Standard Time. You don't need any special supplies. You already have enough supplies. I do offer a money back guarantee. Even if this is not what I wanted, this is not what I thought it was going to be, you get your money back. Okay. If you've ever taken a class with me before, you get a 10% discount. The fee is $150. Includes all the live sessions, written and video course material, downloads, and practice exercises. So that's all inclusive in that fee. Who has questions? Like, how do I register? So you're going to go to that link right there, just the way it's written, with a capital R and a capital L. And you can see the course curriculum all laid out for you. And there's a little introductory video too. And what else is on there? Just a way to register if you want to. So let me go back to that. Anybody have any questions about the course and what you would be? Do you want me to go into the curriculum? Oh, so this originally, the first part of the course, let me just say this. The first part of the course focuses on color primarily. The second part of the course is new material, and that focuses more on the composition and design, the elements, the principles, and all of that. So you have sort of 2 big chunks in the course. And there are exercises throughout the course to help you flex your muscles a little bit. So you actually get to practice these things, and they're not sort of abstract and esoteric. And, you know, when you're at home in your studio, you can actually put them to work. That's the whole purpose of the class, is so that you come away confident with your own use of color and composition. So you can put them to work in whatever kind of work you want to do, even representational work. Yeah. Okay, who has questions? Let me stop the share for a minute. Anybody have any questions? No? Was I clear? Okay,
I'm
You
curious
were-
if you use rule of thirds in your composition.
yes.
If you use that.
The rule of thirds, yeah, that's sort of, you know, that's something for me that is so instinctive that I don't even think about, you know, but I suppose it does need to be mentioned. Yeah, you want to, that's a good way to balance your design as well, is to put things in thirds, like divide it up this way and divide it up this way, and decide where you want your focal point to be, where some of those lines meet. Okay, so if you have, let's say, for instance, you've got this little piece of fabric and it's got 3 horizontal lines across and three vertical lines up and down. So let's just say one of those lines would meet right here. This is maybe where you'd want to have a focal point, in that area right there. Or maybe it's down here in that quadrant. It can be wherever you decide. Is that what you're talking about, Christy?
Yeah.
Okay.
A friend of mine says design around the hashtag.
Yeah, that's right. That would be a hashtag, wouldn't it? Yeah, exactly. I think my favorite part of it is that upper right corner. I like that, you know, where it's here, here, here. It's sort of in that upper right area. That's where I like to put my main idea. So, okay, so I just want to leave you today with that offer and couple more ways to get in touch with me. Let me share the screen again. So did you all get that? You all got that? Okay. So that's my email right there. The second one is my website. And this is the Phoenix Art Quilt Facebook group. You can find me there. And then also on Instagram at Rock Stance Art. And that's pretty much it. That's all I have for you today. So if you have any questions, or if you're shy and you don't want to talk in front of the group, I will hang out for a little bit longer. But otherwise, I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed working with all of you a little bit today and getting to know each one of you a little bit. So
Thank you so much.
you're so welcome. Yes,
Thank you,
absolutely.
Roxanne. That was fun.
Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you for coming. And I will have the recording up on the Facebook group. Is everybody a member of that group yet? The
Yeah.
Phoenix Facebook group? Okay. Yeah,
No,
I'll post the recording on there. It'll be a YouTube link or something. Yeah. Okay, so let me stop.
Somebody new joining just now.
What's that?
Somebody new joining right now.
Oh, what, the group?
Ann Smeaton.
Oh, yeah. Hi. Hey, Anne, are you still there? I cannot hear her or see her. Oh,
It says connecting to audio.
okay. I see that. Yeah.
I need to get off here now, so thank
Okay.
you.
You're
Bye.
so welcome.
nice to meet you, Donna.
Nice
I'll
to
be
meet
too.
everybody. Thanks for coming, Ariel. Ariel, stay on for a second. I just want to catch up with you a bit. Okay? Yeah.
It was very nice to meet you.
Roxanne.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
It was very nice to meet you, Roxanne. I learned quite a bit today, and I thank you for that.
Absolutely, Donna. My pleasure. Thank you for coming.
Look forward to seeing you again.
Yes, me too.
I know.
Bye. So Ariel, unmute yourself. Debbie was on too, but she was being shy.
Yeah, Debbie is very discreet always.
Yeah.
Yeah, she that's her way of being. She's a fantastic person, but
Yeah.
Yeah, she's shy. She's shy,
Yeah.
I think. Discreet, I would say. Yeah.
Yes, I love her
Yeah.
work. Her work is so beautiful. Oh my God,
Beautiful.
I know.
Beautiful.
I'm just in
It's
awe of that
amazing.
piece that she made recently. I was just like, oh wow, that was spectacular.
She made the face of an elephant, I think that the name.
Mhm.
Yeah, that part of the face of an elephant,
Yeah,
and also
Lucy the elephant. Yeah.
and also of her dogs. She made
Yes.
several portraits of one of her dogs. Fantastic, fantastic.
Yes, they're all fantastic.
Yeah, all of them. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So what have
Mm.
you been working on lately?
Well, I'm working on right now. I'm working on a piece that is supposed to enter the regional exit. The regional how to explain it, because well, this it will belong to. Okay, let me start again. The European SAQA group is organizing this year the online SAQA annual conference.
Mhm.
And with that in mind, we have decided to repeat the experience of the project about the Orient Express. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a group project. So each of us, we were working on the same topic, representing something of the related with the Orient Express train.